Welcome to On Our Watch, a podcast about coastal erosion and sustainability in Louisiana, as well as the implications for coastal systems worldwide. My name is Marian Evans. I'm a filmmaker and a producer of the documentary On Our Watch, a feature-length film about Louisiana's coastal land loss crisis. The film's director, Jonathan Evans, and I are proud to produce this podcast series that will continue to explore important coastal issues through conversations with local residents, community leaders, and experts. In this episode, we're speaking with Riley Essert. Riley is the Youth and Environmental Programs Manager at Groundwork New Orleans, an organization dedicated to improving the quality of life in the city of New Orleans. And now, our interview with Riley Essert. Thank you so much for joining us today, Riley. So you are the Youth and Environmental Programs Manager here at Groundwork New Orleans.
Yes.
And I was wondering if you could tell us about how you initially got into this type of work.
Well, I have quite the origin story. It's like a scattered origin. I grew up as a military brat, and I kind of bounced around major city to major city. Didn't actually foster any sort of connection to the environment or nature for most of my life. My parents didn't grow up like bringing us camping or anything that you maybe see on TV. And then I went to school. My freshman year in college, I decided that I was going to go as far away as possible, which was from Maryland, where I graduated high school. I traveled all the way to Flagstaff, Arizona,
Okay.
and went to school for a semester, and people were outside for fun, which was like mind-blowing to me. It rocked my whole world because I was like, oh, this is different. I'm used to going to the mall or something inside where people, gather, not connecting with nature by any means. So yeah, that kind of like opened my eyes to, wait, I'm part of something that's like really intricate and also really vast. And Arizona is, first of all, one of the most beautiful places in the country. And northern Arizona is also a spectacular ecosystem. Like you can go 20 minutes down the road and you're in Sedona, and that's like rivers and creeks and red rock, and it just humbled me and also opened my eyes to what potential my life, what direction I could potentially go. So I originally was a women's gender studies major. I thought that was where I was headed, and then I was like, oh wait, I care so deeply about this, and I want to know more about this. And so I started camping all the time and changed my major, and actually transferred, went to LSU when I moved here to study renewable natural resources and ecology. So I have a bachelor's of science in natural resource ecology and management. And that was also eye-opening. I fell totally even further in love with the whole world that included me. And a lot of my friends went into state jobs where they're banding birds and counting populations and different wildlife jobs like that. And I knew deeply that that wasn't what I wanted to do, but I wasn't sure how I was going to be able to connect like my love for teaching and being with young people, and also caring about the environment. And I kind of traveled around, did a bunch of bibbity-boppity things in your early 20s when you graduate college with no plan. And I actually walked one day in my neighborhood here in New Orleans, and I saw this fence that had painted on it the Earth Lab. And I was like, what is this? And I Googled it. Yeah. And I found Groundwork New Orleans is this local nonprofit, and they actually like have these youth councils, and they bring green team members in to teach them about local environmental stewardship and things like that. And I was like fascinated by it, reached out by email because it's like, is there any way I can like just come hang out?
Yeah.
And at the time it was a different director before Todd, and she never emailed me back. And it ended up working out because like 6 months later, I came back into town from doing another little stint somewhere else. and she actually reached out to me and said, come in, I have this job I think you might be interested in. It was at the time youth program coordinator, which was just part-time, very relaxed. I came and I taught the green team, but it almost felt perfect because I knew I wanted to work with young people. I wanted to be in the city. That's where I feel most comfortable because that's where I grew up. But I wasn't sure how it would all work out, and it kind of just fell into place from there. So I've actually been with Groundwork now for 7 years. And I've built up the program, shifted titles, and Todd came on shortly after me. So we've really been together like as a duo for these last 6+ years. And yeah, it all feels pretty perfectly aligned. Like it all kind of came into place. I was just like, please let me land something. I knew, I kind of grew up in settings where there's a lot of teach play. I played at like sports and stuff. And so it felt pretty natural.
That's so interesting how things just take this roundabout path, but it seems like it's perfect for your interests and your background.
Yeah, it was surely roundabout.
Yeah, that's just life.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I knew I had a vision and I wasn't sure how to get there, but it did come together for us. And
yeah, and so I wanted to ask you about one of the youth programs that you all have here at Groundwork New Orleans that you mentioned called the Green Team.
Mm-hmm.
So can you tell me about what that program entails and what types of projects young people can be a part of?
Yeah, so the mission of that program is to foster environmental stewards and get young people comfortable with community engagement, which is pretty broad, right? Mm-hmm. Like that could be so many things. But I think that's what makes it really powerful. Because we were able to like bring young people in, especially in New Orleans. It's citywide, and we invite anyone from any school within Orleans Parish to apply. And you find very quickly that most of the people who come through the program have not really explored outside of the city, mm-hmm. And don't understand their connection to the greater whole, even just Southeast Louisiana, right? And so I think environmental education in itself is inherently intersectional. Like you have ecology and hydrology and chemistry and everything that comes into understanding the environment. And I think that speaks volumes to how we can approach so many other things. We have to remember that it's all connected. So this kind of becomes like a fun way for young people to see, oh, we live in New Orleans, and it can feel like we are quite literally in a bowl, right? We are just New Orleans. We're this beautiful little gem in this vast, state of all kinds of other things, but we do tend to feel kind of secluded here, and I think young people tend to stay here. But I think that's where we realize, okay, we can see our connection to all the other things. Like, what are we pumping our storm water to? We learn that it's pumped to Lake Pontchartrain. What does Lake Pontchartrain connect to? The Gulf. It just kind of humbles everyone, kind of like the moments I had in my youth where you're like, wait a minute, yeah. We're so much more deeply connected than we realize. So we do things like we do field trips, obviously, to gain just like general comfort with the native environment. We learn native plants, we learn the hydrology of our city, how things function the way they do, why engineering changed that, how we can really foster ways to keep New Orleans afloat in a way. And then also things like community engagement, talking to people, canvassing about things that we find ourselves passionate about. The young people lead lots of different projects. So we do green infrastructure projects, of course. That's like our bread and butter at Groundwork New Orleans. So the young people in the youth program are able to participate in aspects of that. Sometimes it's the full implementation of that. Sometimes it's like, the site selection, the design, and the implementation, depending on what we're doing that session. But sometimes we're just supplemental to something that the ground crew are doing, and we're doing plantings there. But there's lots of hands-on activities that kind of build that connection. So I guess all of that to say, it's pretty like wide-ranging, the things we do, but it all kind of comes together when you're really fostering a love for where you live. Then you start to care about it, and then you start to be more active in different things changing, even policy. You might pay attention more. Can't really care about anything you don't know. So
right. So it's kind of like an introduction to the environment around us,
Absolutely.
Which might spark something different in every kid.
Yeah, I mean, you do see different reactions to everything we do, from someone saying, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life. Like, how did you get here? What trainings do I need to take? And then there's someone's like, oh, I want to be a chef, but I might grow my own herbs now, Yeah. Or, I might compost my scraps now. And, so we have all kinds of things like that. We're compost collecting for the community. We have an earth lab, which originally was the one what opened the door for me to Groundwork. We still have, and it is an outdoor learning space where there's green infrastructure demonstrations, there's raised beds, there's community compost collections. There's all these ways where the young people can feel kind of a sense of ownership over a space and a way to educate our peers and our other people in our community. So yeah, it's wide ranging. Some kids are like, I don't want to do anything like this, but I see the point. And then some kids are like, oh my gosh, this, sent me in the direction of my life path. So it's kind of, that's the best part is young people are the most inspiring, amazing entity to be around when you're in your 30s like me. I feel like as I grew up and came into my adulthood and had my own kids and got into like the everyday mundane, you notice yourself start to focus on the home life. You have so many responsibilities, and it can be hard to feel like you want to be that heavy hitting activist still, or like your passion starts to dwindle because you're putting energy in other places. And to be around young people who still have like all of the energy to throw behind anything new that they've learned and they feel excited about, it can re-energize even us, So I feel like that's been a huge benefit for me. And I think that's what keeps me doing this work, because young people, while they can be challenging, they're high school students. I feel that this is part of my calling because I feel that they can relate to me because I'm young enough, but they also have like they look to me as a guide in a way too because I'm old enough. So, it's mutually beneficial, I think.
Absolutely. And so you all also have, you mentioned another program for young adults called Ground Crew.
Yes.
So what are the types of projects that fall under that program?
So Ground Crew is more of the like day job. This is real workforce. This is young adults who've been trained in the trade of green infrastructure. They do all kinds of installations across the city. They work like Monday through Friday. It's not an internship model, whereas the green team meets a couple days after school, and then on weekends, the Ground Crew is like Monday through Friday. They're putting these things, all the projects get done by the most incredible crew. If you see any of our large-scale projects, that's the Ground Crew, for sure. Like our Claiborne project, the Vision to Reality, Stormwater Park, the Ground Crew is the installer on that. Our Poly project, there's the bigger ones you would definitely see.
Yeah.
Ground Crew on all the pictures.
Okay.
They're in there.
They're the professionals.
Yeah, they're the professionals. And so that's another thing. So we do a clean water certificate training for both our green team and the Ground Crew. And it is a green infrastructure training, but it focuses on, the different hydrology here, the understanding specific to New Orleans. And it's kind of like, I attribute it to like the National Green Infrastructure Certification Program, which is what Todd and I both hold, and Todd actually can teach that, he trains that. But there's a barrier there, right? You have to have a bachelor's degree to do that training, where now we've been able to foster the Clean Water Certificate with the Center for Watershed Protection, which removed the barriers. So I'm actually on the oversight committee, and we kind of discussed the need to make it so that you don't need even a high school diploma to get that training and get into this workforce, because it is a growing field and obviously a much needed field. There's projects coming through the pipeline all the time. So, and in New Orleans, we really need green infrastructure. We can't just have green infrastructure, of course. We have proven that we need these pumps to stay existing.
Yeah.
But we need them to work in tandem, right? Like they're a collaborative effort. We need both.
Yeah.
And I think we're realizing now that we need more of the green. We have a whole lot of gray.
And ways for people to get involved.
And definitely ways for people to get involved, and people that are from here to take those jobs.
So what are some of the projects that you've been involved in with Groundwork New Orleans that you're most proud of?
I am most proud of the student-led projects. So I mentioned the green team, and they are high school students that come through the program, and they're often learning for the first time what a native plant is. I mean, we try to cover things that we don't feel is often covered in regular school science classes, especially when it comes to environmental justice and things like that. But green infrastructure is huge. It's specific to New Orleans. I don't think it's probably centered in a lot of other states. And it is a real climate adaptation intervention that exists. So every season, we have young people design their own green infrastructure project. And usually it's the students who have come through the program more than once, so they're feeling most confident. And it is often they choose their school or their neighbor's house or something, but they go through the whole process of like community engagement step 1, right? Talk to the people. Do you notice it's flooding here? Do you notice it's hotter here? Why don't you have trees? Did you cut them down? Did they disappear from Katrina? Asking questions, really getting involved, learning about their neighbors and where the community that they reside in. And then they take the next step and then they work with the residents and decide, okay, we have these options. Let me teach you that these can do this here. What do you think about this? Would you like your AC bill to go lower? If you had a tree in 20 years creating shade, would you like to see less flooding in front of your house? What if we put a French drain? Or, they have that skill set now to have these conversations, and then we could put them in the ground. So they're drawing up the design, they're going through all of the steps of that process, and then we see it come to fruition, and then they're super proud. And it's a tangible asset that young people have left for the community, which is like really powerful. And I think even if they go on to do completely irrelevant to green infrastructure careers, they can always come home and see something that they positively impacted.
Right.
So, and it kind of includes every step of the process. The community engagement part is big because that's a skill you could take in so many directions.
Do you have any projects coming up right now that you're particularly excited about?
Well, I am super pumped that we are expanding our green team. We just got some grant money to kind of pilot our first school-based green team. So we're going to still have our citywide programming where we have different sessions throughout the year for any kid in any school. But now we're going to have a green team that's like located within a school, and they meet there kind of almost like a club, and still do field trips and stuff, but that way they can do projects around their local neighborhood to their school, kind of connecting with that specific area, and hopefully expand that to like lots of other schools, and serve more youth that way. So I'm excited about that. Any expansion where we can like, do more of this for more young people, especially here in New Orleans, I think.
Yeah, that's
pretty big.
Awesome.
It's not necessarily a project, but it is exciting that's coming up.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much, Riley, for talking to me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to On Our Watch. We hope you enjoyed our discussion with Riley Essert. Don't forget to subscribe to On Our Watch on your favorite podcast app to be notified about future episodes. You can find our feature-length documentary On Our Watch, as well as a video version of today's episode, in the links below. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll be back with another episode next week. This podcast is made possible through support from the Greater New Orleans Foundation and executive produced by Bruno UK Steiner.